Ryan Reynolds here for, I guess, my 100th Mint commercial. No, don't. I mean, honestly, when I started this, I thought I only have to do like 4 of these. I mean, it's unlimited premium wireless for $15 a month. How are there still people paying 2 or 3 times that much? I'm sorry, I shouldn't be victim blaming here. Give it a try at mintmobile.com/save. Whenever you're ready.
$45 upfront payment equivalent to $15 per month. New customers on first 3-month plan only. Taxes and fees extra. Speed slower above 40 gigabytes. See details.
Welcome to the Sportsman's Voice Roundup, your weekly look at conservation and sporting community news happening across the nation and on the Hill. Thanks for tuning in. This is the TSV Roundup.
Almost 4 years ago, and it needed serious renovations. And he's like, got a quote on it from a contractor, and he's like, the quote's absurd, so I'm just going to do it all myself, and just been taking his time doing it. It's like, I'm not cutting it until I move out of my mom's basement. So it's like 3-4 years now where he hasn't cut his hair, and his hair was rushing on his second microphone. So you could hardly hear him.
All right. All right, here we go. All right, welcome in, everybody, to another edition of the Sportsman's Voice Roundup. It's Wednesday, and we got stories from around the nation for you. This is the week of September. Let me try that again, Corey. What the hell is this? Today's Tuesday, right? Today's Tuesday. So it's the 9th. Jeez, I'm way off. All right, do that again, Corey. Cody. Jeez, Welcome, everybody, to another edition of the Sportsman's Voice Roundup for the week of September 9th, 2024. This week, we're heading to the Hill. CSF Director, Federal Relations, set to testify on 3 bills before Congress. Firearm Pre-Emption Laws and their role protecting opportunities for sportsmen and women. Crossing state lines, the role of non-resident hunters in the western U.S. We have some policy on hunting dogs to bring to you. And then finally, a little self-indulgence here. Our first anniversary of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. And thanks to you, the listening audience. But before we get to all that, let us catch up with our Director of Federal Relations. And you've heard him many times on this program, Taylor Schmitz. We're here in his office as we gear up for our annual banquet. Taylor, thanks so much for carving out a little time in your busy day.
Fred, great to be with you. Appreciate you having me, and always good to see you in person, and glad that you're in town this week for the banquet.
Yes, indeed. The humidity is low here in D.C., so this New Hampshire guy is thankful for that. And we're going to walk over for the hearing here in a little bit. So just kind of go into it before we head in there. What are you testifying on, and what are we looking forward to as far as interactions with the committee?
Yeah, Fred, thank you very much. So later today being Tuesday, at 2 p.m., I will be testifying before the House Natural Resources Subcommittee on Water, Wildlife, and Fisheries on 3 priorities for CSF. One of those is the bipartisan tax stamp revenue transfer for Wildlife and Recreation Act. This is a really common sense bill. Right now, as you know, when you purchase a firearm suppressor, you have to pay a one-time $200 tax stamp to the ATF. That money currently goes to the General Treasury for no specific purpose. So what this bill seeks to do is it sends the bulk of that $200 to the Pippin Robertson account to fund on-the-ground state-based conservation and access projects ranging from state wildlife research and conservation to hunter recruitment, target shooting range construction, among others. The bill also requires that suppressors are processed within a 90-day timeline. We feel that is important because right now there's nothing in statute that requires suppressors to be processed in a certain time frame. As you know, we've seen suppressor applications take as long as 12 to 14 months. Mm-hmm. In recent months, this has been closer to about 7.3 days for individual applications and 144 days for trust applications. So ATF is already doing this. We want to codify that into law. The second bill is the Wildlife Movement Through Partnerships Act, which essentially seeks to codify the Department of the Interior Secretarial Order 3362 from 2018. What that effort did is it sought to conserve migration corridor and winter range habitat across 11 western states for 3 species, being deer, elk, and pronghorn. Since 2018 and to today, the last administration and the current administration has really been operating under goodwill and moving these efforts forward. However, as administrations change or as administration priorities change, all these efforts can be lost. So we feel it's important to codify this effort into statute, which is what the Wildlife Movement Through Partnerships Act will do. The other piece of that is all of the funding that has been provided to migration corridor and winter range habitat conservation to date has been provided through limited existing programmatic funding, meaning that the agencies are having to repurpose existing dollars to fund these efforts. So what we want to do is we want to set up a standalone program that'll fund these efforts, but we also want to broaden this program. As I mentioned, Secretary Order 3362 is a tremendous step forward. However, it was limited in scope to those 11 western states and 3 species. So this legislation would broaden that across the nation, and all species would be eligible. And the reason that this is necessary is because, as you and I both know, everywhere we look, we're seeing more and more development across the country, leading to fragmented habitat for wildlife, which becomes especially problematic for many species of wildlife that must migrate or move to meet the annual demands of their life cycle. So, recognizing that, we feel it's important to broaden this program across the country. And then the third bill is known as the BioSafe Act, which requires the Fish and Wildlife Service to withdraw the proposed rule, commonly known as BIDA. BIDA, as proposed, would prohibit a number of longstanding management practices within the National Wildlife Refuge System, such as cooperative agriculture, predator management, use of GMO crops, etc. At a time when funding for the National Wildlife Refuge System is really limited, we believe it's important that refuge managers across the country have as many tools as they can in their toolbox to maximize the limited amount of funding that they currently receive. So those bills will be up today. I think it's a really good opportunity to move the needle on these. This is obviously the first step in the legislative process for these 3 bills, but we're looking forward to a bipartisan hearing later this afternoon. And as you and I have talked about in the past, conservation issues are bipartisan, and we're looking forward to having another bipartisan hearing on these 3 priorities.
It should be pretty easy to get across for what you just said. I do get curious sometimes, specifically on the tax stamp revenue transfer. This is a great idea, and we've talked to our board member, Brandon Maddox, on this here in the past. 85% going back to conservation is a really smart idea. Now, I know there will be people in the audience that says, we just want to get rid of this altogether, which is fair. But since that's not in the offing anytime soon, this is a fantastic fix and would add, $150 to $170 million in conservation access could be realized through that. And that's not a small chunk of change. So common sense legislation here that could do a whole lot of good. Exciting about that, and exciting about the Wildlife Movement Through Partnership Act. And again, we've covered this in the past as well, but certainly exciting that it's able to broaden its scope across the entire country. And as you rightfully pointed out, especially here in the East, our landscape is so fragmented. You can see it. However, out west, you can go out there and see these vast areas of wilderness and openness, but because of property boundaries and political boundaries, it is extremely fragmented. And, being able to work with the public and work with the federal agencies and local agencies is vitally important to realize all this. So this is fantastic. And then finally wrapping up with the BioSafe. Specifically, are we talking here about as it pertains to use of lead in the refuge system and things like that, obviously we have positions on and really the science hasn't borne out?
So for this bill specifically, the BIDA proposal does not touch the issue of lead ammunition and fishing tackle, which is, we are pleased to see that. Obviously that has been included in other proposals such as hunt fish rolls in recent years. But the BIDA proposal itself really is about the conservation tools at the disposal of refuge managers, as I mentioned, cooperative agriculture and use of GMOs, predator management, etc. And again, where we sit is we understand that climate change and anthropogenic changes are having a significant impact on conservation across the country. And those are two challenges that we at CSF feel that it's necessary to address. But recognizing that, we need all the tools that we can have in the toolbox for refuge managers. And in many cases, activities such as cooperative agriculture is the best way to mitigate the effects of climate change and anthropogenic changes. And as you know, we need to maximize every single acre that we have within the National Wildlife Refuge system to benefit wildlife. And it's important to not treat National Wildlife Refuges as national parks or anything else like that. These are different entities, and we need to treat them as such.
Very good. Taylor, thanks for your time. Look forward to your testimony on the Hill, and the listening audience can look forward to a recap of that and how that all worked out in a coming episode. Taylor, thank you so much. All right, let's get to the rest of those headlines. Jake Gould brings us this, Firearm Pre-Emption Laws and their role in protecting opportunities for sportsmen and women. Firearm Pre-Emption Laws protect the right of sportsmen and women to legally own a firearm in their state without having to worry about overcomplicated regulations created by local, lower-level governments. Firearm prevention laws ensure that responsible firearm owners have equal treatment throughout their state, regardless of the city or county they live in. I can think of a few places that need to pay attention here. South Dakota legislators recently strengthened their firearm preemption laws by passing Senate Bill 39, which prohibits homeowners associations from being able to create restrictions on firearms and their firearm ammunition. Side note, when I was house shopping so many years ago, that was one of my requirements of my realtor. Any home within a homeowners association was automatically disqualified. I think many in the audience probably agree. Not really interested in my neighbors telling me what to do on my own property, but another conversation for another. It's certainly not worrying about what I may or may not have. I personally, I consider this stuff like my personal finances and other hot topic social issues that, are just, kind of keep to yourself in polite society, not necessarily run away from some of these things. But anyway, back to the article here. A real quick way to get me fired up. State firearm preemption laws limit the ability of lower governments to create laws and regulations that differ from county to county. Responsible firearm owners are required to understand and follow state laws regarding firearms, in addition to regulations at the local level, can often create confusing patchwork of regulations. No kidding, Massachusetts. Without these firearm law preemption at the state level, individuals would be required to learn and understand the intricacies of all firearm laws based on the jurisdiction they are in or planning to visit. Truly, as we've covered, there are not only municipalities, but just states overall that have really set our community and law-abiding citizens up for failure on so many of these things, which is why Jake's article is timely and important. Let's round it out here. Specifically in Jake's area that he covers, this session, legislators in South Dakota strengthened their preemption by passing Senate Bill 39, as we discussed, prohibits homeowner association from restricting the possession and transportation of a firearm or ammunition. Passing this law ensured that responsible firearm owners to not have to worry about an unnecessary and confusing patchwork of regulations when moving to or visiting neighborhoods within the HOAs in South Dakota. In recent years, state firearm preemption laws were also used to defeat efforts to close firearm retailers during the COVID-19 pandemic. An example of that is our good friends at Bass Pro Shops, who are facing orders from local officials near Kansas City, Missouri, to close after the business was not deemed, air finger quotes here, essential. 'Twas an interesting time and what was considered essential. Fortunately, Missouri's existing preemption statutes were invoked, ultimately ensuring that the store remained open to the public for the sale of firearms and ammunition as people sought safe, healthy recreational opportunities in the outdoors. CSF supports firearm preemption efforts to ensure responsible firearm owners can confidently possess, transport, and use their important sporting tools. Moving forward, legislators should continue to explore and support opportunities to strengthen firearm preemption in their state to ensure equal treatment of firearm owners throughout the state. And again, as highlighted here, our community, specifically firearm owners, discriminated continuously, like it's no big deal and no problem. Works into the Sunday hunting issue, so many issues. Great article by Jake there. Thanks for bringing that to us. This from Ken Keene, crossing state lines, the role of non-resident hunters in the western U.S. Ooh, stand by, hot topic here, hot stove stuff. Ken starts out, sportsmen and women carry the bulk of the load as it relates to conservation funding, the user-paid public benefits, ASCF. While the sporting conservation community bears this financial responsibility with honor, what is less discussed and appreciated is the role that non-resident hunters and anglers play in many states, given the wide disparity between resident and non-resident license fees. Further, non-resident hunters and anglers are often more reliant on local businesses while traveling for their outdoor pursuits, providing important implications for recreational economy in many states. Yeah, man, room, board, gas, at all. I forgot my ammo. I got to go buy some ammo. I forgot this or that. I got to go buy this. We all do it. I got to go buy my license, as we started out saying. Highlights here is competition for hunting and angling access continues to garner increased attention. Many states are receiving pressure from residents to limit out-of-state participation in hunting and fishing. While the pressure grows, there are many important factors that decision makers must consider. In most states, non-resident hunting and fishing licenses cost considerably more, yes they do, than equivalent resident licenses, contributing more to the ASCF on a per-license basis. Non-resident hunters and anglers are often more heavily reliant on local businesses, as we said in the intro, while traveling to hunt and fish. Sportsmen and women, particularly in the western half of the United States, are in an interesting position. On one hand, participation trends in the outdoor community continue to suggest that we are losing hunters and anglers. On the other hand, competition for opportunities on quality public lands and waters seems to be increasing, as do instances of point creep among the western big game hunters. If you go to the EPUB there's a link to what point creep is if you're unaware. And my very brief description of it is basically these lottery draws and point systems as preferential considerations are giving to those with the most points. There's only a certain amount of tag opportunities allocated in the state, and you start getting all the buildup of points, trying to get new applicants, so on and so forth, and it creates an issue there. You can read more about point creep in the link again. While the exact source of this conundrum is multifaceted and still relatively poorly understood, that hasn't stopped the growing chorus of complaints from resident hunters and anglers about non-residents that are prompting decision makers in the West to act. For example, our troubled state of Colorado, arguably the best known elk hunting state in the Union, recently adopted rules that would require non-resident archery bull elk hunters to apply for limited tags through a lottery system. While many other methods and all cow hunting licenses for non-residents have long been issued via lottery, this move for archery bull tags came as a surprise to many. Elsewhere, CSF worked closely with partners in Oklahoma to help pass widely praised legislation that created the first license fee increase in the state, and that is seen in the last over 2 decades. While this was ultimately a win for conservation funding, increasing pressure from resident hunters and anglers and boaters caused much of the increase to be placed on the shoulders of non-resident hunters. While many hunters are often witnessing an increase of vehicles sporting out-of-state license plates at the best trailheads, and boat ramps, there are important considerations that must be taken into account before we take steps to limit non-resident participation. Again, the funding mechanism here, the contributions there, and the match dollars through PR. The consideration that, like we already said, the increased prices in 13 states that comprise of CSF's Western region, non-resident hunting license and permit sales represent approximately 56% of hunting license revenue generated across the region, about 51% across all states west of the Mississippi River. Further, 6 of our western states, CSF's western states, Alaska, Colorado, Idaho, Montana, New Mexico, and Wyoming, receive more than 60% of their overall hunting license and permit revenue from non-residents. In some cases, more importantly, non-resident hunters and anglers are also often the primary customers of the local outdoor recreation-focused business. Guides, hotels, restaurants, and many other businesses rely on non-residents flocking to the fields, forests, mountains, and waterways away from home for business. None of this information is designed to minimize the experience of hunters, resident or non, who are experiencing increased competition in the field. However, it does highlight that the solution is not necessarily as simple as limiting opportunities for those coming out of state. With all this in mind, CSF looks forward to working with our partners, state fish and wildlife agencies, and our nation's elected officials to better understand these challenges and find solutions that would work for all of our nation's sportsmen and women. Yeah, not an easy one there at all. I think no matter where you live, I mean, I know it's a Western-focused article here, but especially during turkey season in the Northeast, so many turkey hunters, either for their pursuit of the 49-state Super Slam, if that's their motivation, or they just want to try and travel to a different spot and just see some different states, specifically the Northeast and Mid-Atlantic, because they're such small states and they're all crowded. A traveling turkey hunter can, knock out a few states, and if you're really good and proficient at taking turkeys, and you got the time and the resources, it's not out of the question to knock half a dozen states out in that region. And again, double-edged sword, I guess. As Ken's pointed out, I mean, there's a lot of revenue from those out-of-state turkey hunters, but in your more challenged states, for that public land hunting, or because leasing is just taking over, it can be a frustration. And not to pick on like Alabama, but I've seen a lot of Alabama tags in New Hampshire in the last couple of years. It's a long drive, but the secret's out for what we've got, and we obviously appreciate those dollars coming in and contributing, especially to a state like New Hampshire that has found itself challenged in the funding. But we're also, not as challenged as most states, but it's still challenging as more out-of-staters move to a traditional hunting, traditionally accepted hunting and fishing is accepted as a part of the landscape tradition, and other people bring their philosophies into it and start posting their land. Now, that fleeting colonial land sharing tradition that we enjoy most of the Northeast is fleeting. So anyway, I'm starting to ramble here, just trying to give more meat to Kent's point, but it's not easily solvable. We're just going to have to keep working through it. And I would argue, I think it's a great idea to go up on some of these non-resident licenses, not so much as a deterrent, but to put value on one state and their resources. Oklahoma, they got a good deer quality situation going on. So, you're going to go out there and DIY it. I guess what's it worth to you? And for those that are still going to do it, I don't think you're going to lose too many people, I guess is what I'm saying. I think people are determined to do what they want and pursue their outdoor pursuits. So, again, coming back to my state, it could stand to raise non-resident fees to help with some of the shortfalls, because we got a pretty cheap deal going on. All the New England states for sure. New York as well. It's not very inexpensive. It's not very expensive to come into those states and enjoy those resources while paying a pretty cheap fee. Anyway, more to come there. That's a conversation that will continue going forward. This here from Connor Barker. More than just early season heat, policy initiatives sporting dog owners in the Southeast should be aware of. Whether intentional or not, there are bills introduced every year in the Southeast and across the country that would negatively impact your ability to hunt with your favorite hunting companion. While the article is focused on the Southeast in particular, it is important, as we just said, this is a nationwide issue that CSF continues to stand on the forefront of protecting sporting dog owners. In 2022, Senate Bill 2305 and House Bill 2034 were introduced in Tennessee that would have required unnecessary tethering requirements for responsible breeders, kennel owners, and hunters by requiring that no dog can be left tethered or unattended. In 2023, dogs actively engaged in lawful hunting in Tennessee were exempted from the kennel restrictions. Also in 2023, an exemption for the sporting dogs was included in a mandatory spay-neuter ordinance issued by a local county commission in Georgia for all dogs over 6 months of age. In addition, in 2023, CSF and our partners fought back House Bill 1581, FLHB 1581, that would have required owners of intact female dogs over 6 months of age to register as a commercial breeder. Connor's article goes on to put more meat on the bones on some of those examples we just highlighted there. Dog bills do not always warrant bad news for hunters, and here's a silver lining for the article. For example, and as covered here recently, HB 802, supported by CSF and the Louisiana Legislative Sportsmen's Caucus, was passed that allows hunters to use dogs to track and dispatch mortally wounded deer with the use of lights after legal shooting hours on private land. You can go back, we covered that, but that was a good win there recently. It's not, again, another problem that's not going away. It's low-hanging fruit. The likes of PETA and HSUS use this as a foothold, dump a bunch of money in on it, broadly cast sheer arguments, uneducated arguments, and play on the emotions of the public. And that's why we're here, to educate and advocate. All right, finally, a little self-bragging here. We said it last week, but yes, this little program, our Sportsman's Voice podcast, celebrates 1 year on the airwaves. So we're 1 year old, and thank you. I thank all of you for listening, those who continue to tune in. We see you. We do see a great uptick in our listenership, our metrics, internationally. So it's great. Appreciate you guys coming along for the ride for this last year. We are not slowing down. We continue to plan into 2025. We got some great end of season wrap up shows for you. This week we're at our annual banquet here in the nation's capital. So for sure going to have some good quality sound coming out of the event for you in the coming weeks. Also be heading to a committee hearing where we're going to talk to some members about bills that are currently working through tax stamp, corridors bill. So we'll be bringing you sound from some of those folks, as well as industry partners and Taylor Schmitz will report more on that. Gosh, just so much. Recently sat down with our Governor Sportsman's Caucus chair, outgoing New Hampshire Governor Chris Sununu. So we've got that sound to bring to you tomorrow. So if you're not at the banquet, or you're on your way home from the banquet, or anywhere else, do tune in for that feature episode. Governor Chris Sununu, great guy, just so down to earth. Glad we have him on our Governor Sportsman's Caucus, and wish him all the best going forward. We've also got a very special guest that when we look forward to the end of the month here, celebrating National National Hunting and Fishing Day, the one and only the legendary founder and lead outfitter for Bass Pro Shops, Mr. Johnny Morris, is joining the program. So look forward to that. Super interesting and entertaining. Very generous with his time, and fantastic. If you've not heard the man speak and storytell, it's just, again, another person that is just super down to earth, despite the presence, the notoriety and where he is in society. And anyway, tune in for that one. It's going to be a great one. And again, all this is made possible by you, the listenership, who continue to share, listen, and tune in every Wednesday for this here Sportsman's Voice Roundup. As you guys well know, our weekly news roundup from around the nation and the bi-weekly feature. Thank you. That will wrap it up. If you are a legislator and you're listening and you plan on coming to NASC and Baton Rouge, you need to sign up. Our early bird registration has passed, but we want you there nonetheless. If you're an industry partner, if you're an agency partner, we'd like you there. We'd love to see all 50 states represented from our agency partners. We'd love to see all 50 states represented from our in-state legislative sportsmen's caucuses. I believe we reported last year that we did have that. So let's do it again, and let's get more of you there. Thanks for joining us on this edition of the Sportsman's Voice podcast. Ladies and gentlemen, your support is crucial, and you can help us out right now by leaving a review, filling in those 5 stars where available, sharing this episode with friends and family, and engaging with us socially. CSF can be found on Facebook, Instagram, and X, formerly known as Twitter. Together, we can protect the outdoor sports we love and continue to keep you informed wherever you are. That's it for this week. Until next time, we'll see you later.